You are not your thoughts. A belief is simply a thought you've repeated long enough to accept it as true. To make some major changes to your life, you must become conscious of the unconscious program and intentionally install a new identity. What if the thoughts that are holding you back aren't even true? A belief is just a thought that you practice this thing long enough. That's all the belief is. Since science tells us that 90% of our thoughts today are the same thoughts we thought yesterday, the challenge is that the repeated thoughts become beliefs, and then those beliefs becomes habits, and then those habits become your identity. And that's the thing that we have to work on. My name is Mark, aka Create Lifestyle. I help people, especially those over 50, break out of outdated beliefs so they can create freedom, abundance, peace of mind, residual income, and leave a powerful legacy. And if you're under 50, you can certainly glean some insight here and perhaps shave decades off of your evolution and the realization of your goals. I call all of this breaking out of the matrix. And today I'm talking about your self-worth. And I'm talking about your subconscious mind, law of attraction, and these types of things. Some time ago, a friend of mine, I was out with a friend of mine, and we were just kind of hanging out. And we were in Atlantic City, basically, just hanging out at the casinos all throughout the night. We had a bad night. Let's just put it there and leave it there. But on the drive home, we had a very interesting conversation. And my friend, he made an observation about me that I never really knew about myself. He said, Mark, your problem is you are unworthy. And I didn't know what that meant. I just shrugged it off. And then years later, that conversation came back to me and I understood what he was saying. And he's talking about self-worth. So I just didn't believe in myself. I didn't have that strong foundation of confidence and believability. And then that's the biggest problem that I see with people is, and why they say stay stuck. It's because of this whole thing called self-worth. Now, there was a book written by a gentleman. It was called Psycho-Cybernetics. And it was written by a gentleman. His last name is Maltz. But basically, he was a plastic surgeon. And over time of dealing with all of his patients, he noticed that when he made changes to people's appearance, that their self-confidence basically went through the roof. So self-worth has a lot to do with how you feel about yourself. Now understand that you are not your thoughts. The biggest mistake that people make is believing the thoughts that they think. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, I'm too old, I can't change, success is for other people. When you start saying those kind of negative thoughts, they just get planted in your mind. And then you believe them and you begin to act out of these thoughts. But we can change these thoughts. So the whole challenge is recognizing these unconscious thoughts and making them conscious so that we can change them. I talk a lot about breaking out of this matrix, and the matrix, they want you to just go out and get a job, play it safe, be realistic, trade all your time for money. Meanwhile, they're out on the golf course while you're in the office, right? So understand that we have to break out of this matrix thing. It's all our thoughts that we've basically programmed ourselves and created. So here's where things kind of get interesting, because your thoughts create your feelings, and then the feelings reinforce the thought, and then the thought creates more of the same thing, and before long you just get trapped in this loop. And that's where I was trapped at. So breaking out of this thing, it gets uncomfortable because we're just used to our routines. We're used to the same thoughts that we have. And in order to make these changes, we have to immerse ourselves in our minds and change these thoughts. It's uncomfortable because we automatically return back to your familiar thoughts and your behaviors. And it's because familiarity feels safe. So what we have to do is we have to transform ourselves. Instead of saying I'm unworthy, we say I am worthy. I can learn new skills. I can create freedom. And I can create a new chapter. So these new beliefs, they start off as a repeated thought. That's why there are people who advocate saying affirmations, because you're installing new thoughts into your mind. And in order for those thoughts to take hold, you just have to repeat them kind of over and over again. And understand that the sweet spot of this is right when you're falling asleep and right when you're waking up. So you grab these affirmations and that's when you say them, when you're falling asleep and when you're waking up. Now, this mental rehearsal is going to change things. High performers use this all the time. Athletes, entrepreneurs, speakers, people mentally rehearse success before it happens. In sports, you ever notice certain athletes, they take a long, deep breath and they're visualizing the performance. In basketball, when they're at the foul line, a lot of them close their eyes, take a deep breath, visualize making the basket, and then go on. In tennis, before they do the serve, they close their eyes, take deep breaths, and visualize the ball going into play properly. So, but we have to do it the same way. So if I'm making sense, share, follow, subscribe, stick with me, because we're all going on this journey together. Okay, now I like to link all of this to creating some residual income, because breaking out of the matrix starts with awareness. But after you become aware, now you need a plan of action. You need some tools that you could use. We have to move from the employee side of things over to the asset class. There's lots of things we can do to get into the asset class. You can go out, buy some stocks, you buy some real estate, invest in some crypto, open a business. There's no shortage of things that we can do. The challenge is we're just accustomed to being an employee, most of us. And then we have to learn how to employ ourselves. So what we're doing over here is we're working with a community that is basically creating a digital presence online and creating digital products and building residual income. That way. That's what we're doing over here. If you're interested in learning about this, just check the links down in my bio. Follow the links. I have the information is there where you can link up with me and learn about what our community is doing. Anyway, just in closing, you are not your thoughts. Your repeated thoughts become your beliefs become your habits become your identity, and then that's when the result changes, because the identity will create your results. As I always say, the only way out is in. Peace, one love, and control your destiny.